Larry Bird finally reveals why NBA legends hate Magic Johnson. They didn't boo Magic Johnson because he failed. They booed him because he won and changed the rules while doing it. Behind the smile that saved the NBA, there was tension, resentment, and relationships that quietly fell apart. Even legends who respected Magic didn't always want to stand beside him. And according to Larry Bird, there was a reason for that. This isn't a highlight reel. It's the story they rarely tell. Stay with legends of Black excellence and decide for yourself whether greatness inspires unity or demands a price. The Magic everyone loved and feared. Few athletes in American sports history carried an aura as powerful as Magic Johnson. From the moment he entered the NBA in 1979, Magic was not just a basketball player, he was a global symbol. His smile was marketable, his style electrifying, and his impact immediate. Television ratings surged, arenas sold out, and the NBA transformed from a struggling league into a cultural force. Yet behind that radiant image existed a quieter truth. The same charisma that captivated fans also created unease inside NBA locker rooms. Magic did not simply share the spotlight. He absorbed it often, leaving little space for others who had spent years earning their status. Magic's rise disrupted the traditional hierarchy of professional basketball. Veterans were accustomed to respect being accumulated slowly through seasons of sacrifice, physical toll, and obedience to systems. Magic rewrote that script. As a rookie, he became the face of the Los Angeles Lakers, and by extension the league itself. Media attention followed him relentlessly. Endorsement deals arrived early, and organizational loyalty tilted decisively in his direction. For many players across the NBA, this wasn't just admiration, it felt like displacement. The resentment was rarely spoken aloud, but it lingered beneath the surface, especially among stars who suddenly found themselves competing not only against Magic's talent, but against his gravitational pull on power and attention. No one understood this dynamic better than Larry Bird. Bird never framed Magic as dishonest or undeserving. Instead, he offered a more uncomfortable explanation. Magic's presence changed the emotional balance of competition. Bird acknowledged that Magic had a way of making everything revolve around him: offenses, narratives, even legacies. Playing alongside or against Magic meant adjusting your identity. For fiercely independent competitors, that adjustment felt like surrender. Bird himself admitted he kept his distance for years, not out of hostility, but because closeness could dilute the edge required to compete at the highest level. The paradox of Magic Johnson is this: his leadership lifted teams while quietly unsettling peers. Coaches adapted or were replaced. Roles shifted. Systems bent to his instincts. None of this required cruelty or malice, only certainty. Magic believed in his vision completely, and organizations rewarded that belief. To fans, this was greatness in motion. To fellow legends, it was a reminder that standing near Magic often meant living in his shadow. In the end, the NBA's discomfort with Magic Johnson was not rooted in hatred, but in the cost of orbiting a star whose light was simply too strong to ignore. A rookie who disrupted the Lakers' order. When Magic Johnson walked into the Los Angeles Lakers locker room in the fall of 1979, he did not arrive quietly. At just 20 years old, the #1 overall pick brought with him unmatched charisma, relentless optimism, and an almost cinematic confidence. To the public, Magic symbolized hope for a franchise searching for relevance again. To the men already wearing purple and gold, however, his arrival signaled something far more disruptive: a sudden shift in power. The Lakers were no longer a team built strictly on seniority and earned authority. They were becoming a team organized around a rookie's gravity. The first fault line ran directly through Norm Nixon, the incumbent starting point guard. Nixon had led the Lakers for 2 seasons, averaging over 17 points per game and earning his role through discipline rather than flash. Overnight, that stability vanished. Magic didn't just compete for minutes. He absorbed the media attention, the endorsements, and eventually the organizational trust. While Nixon remained on a standard contract, Magic soon signed a then unprecedented 25-year, $25 million deal, a clear declaration of who the franchise believed belonged at the center of its future. Inside the locker room, the message was impossible to ignore. Nixon wasn't pushed out by poor performance. He was displaced by inevitability. Above both guards stood Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the reigning MVP and unquestioned legend. At 34, Kareem had earned respect through dominance, longevity, and intellectual leadership. For years, the Lakers had been his team. Yet Magic's arrival subtly redirected attention away from the veteran cornerstone. Cameras followed the rookie's smile, not the skyhook. Interviews focused on Magic's joy, not Kareem's precision. Though professional and composed, Kareem sensed the change immediately. Authority was no longer flowing upward from experience. It was being reassigned to youth energy and marketability. This generational tension wasn't rooted in ego alone. It reflected two competing models of leadership. Kareem represented earned command. Magic embodied instant belief. Nixon symbolized continuity. Magic promised transformation. The locker room became a quiet battleground of philosophies where respect was renegotiated without formal discussion. Magic never needed to declare himself the leader, his presence did that for him. And while the Lakers would soon reap championships from this shift, the early cost was emotional friction. The 1979 rookie didn't just change how the Lakers played. He changed who mattered most. For veterans accustomed to hierarchy and patience, that recalibration felt less like progress and more like displacement, and the ripple effects would echo through the team for years to come. The night Magic took over the NBA. The 1980 NBA Finals delivered a moment that still divides basketball history into before and after. When Magic Johnson took the floor in Game 6 against Philadelphia, he was no longer just a gifted rookie or a rising star. At only 20 years old, he became the axis on which the entire championship turned. The Lakers were facing elimination pressure, the spotlight was blinding, and expectations were merciless. For fans, this was an opportunity to witness greatness. For those inside the Lakers' locker room, it would become the night that permanently altered how power, leadership, and credit were distributed. That context matters because Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the league's most dominant force and the rightful Finals MVP favorite, was not there. A severely sprained ankle kept Kareem in Los Angeles, forcing the Lakers to improvise on the biggest stage imaginable. What followed was unprecedented. Magic started the game at center, then seamlessly rotated through all 5 positions. He finished with 42 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 assists, leading the Lakers to a championship victory. It remains the only time in NBA history that a rookie has won Finals MVP, an objective, uncontested fact. From the outside, it looked like destiny. From within, it felt like a shift that could not be undone. To the public, Magic's performance was heroic. To some teammates and rivals, it raised a more complicated question. Was this a transcendent act of leadership or the beginning of an ego inflated beyond restraint? Kareem had carried the Lakers all season, averaging 33.4 points per game in the finals before his injury. Yet history would freeze on Magic's moment, not Kareem's dominance. This wasn't about jealousy alone. It was about narrative ownership. Championships are shared, but stories often are not. In one night, Magic became the face of a title built by many, and that imbalance lingered long after the confetti settled. Years later, Scottie Pippen offered a revealing reflection on that performance. Pippen called Magic's ability to step into Kareem's role, transcending what you can do as a player, emphasizing leadership over position. His words highlight why the moment still resonates. Magic didn't just fill a gap, he redefined possibility. Yet that same transcendence unsettled the traditional order of respect in the NBA. The Finals of 1980 did not simply crown a champion. It crowned a new kind of authority, one rooted in versatility, confidence, and spectacle. Whether viewed as pure genius or the spark of an overgrown ego, that night ensured one thing: Magic Johnson would never again be seen as just another teammate. He had become the center of the basketball universe, and not everyone was ready to live in that reality. Ego power and the coach who fell. By the start of the 1981-82 season, Magic Johnson was no longer merely a prodigy, he was a force testing the limits of authority. Fresh off a championship and a finals MVP, Magic believed the game should move faster, freer, and through him. What he resisted was constraint. The Lakers' offense under head coach Paul Westhead emphasized structured discipline and patience principles that clashed with Magic's instinctive improvisational style. Practices grew tense, plays were ignored, meetings turned confrontational. To Magic, the system felt like a cage. To Westhead, Magic's freelancing felt like insubordination. The gap between player and coach widened with every possession. The breaking point came swiftly and publicly. After a narrow win early in the season, Westhead confronted Magic, demanding adherence to the offense. Magic's response, defiant and unfiltered, signaled that the balance of power had shifted. Within days, he told reporters he could no longer play for the Lakers and asked to be traded. It was an extraordinary moment for the era, a 22-year-old star challenging his coach in the open. Less than 24 hours later, Westhead was fired. The message rippled across the league when elite talent and coaching authority collided. Talent could now win. This was not rumor or exaggeration. It was a documented turning point that many later cited as the birth of modern player power. Stepping into the vacuum was Pat Riley, an assistant with a keen sense for pace and personality. Riley embraced Magic's vision, unleashing the fast break that would become Showtime. The results were immediate and measurable. Under Riley, the Lakers finished 57-25 and won the 1982 NBA championship. To critics of Westhead, the success validated Magic's instincts. To others, it suggested something more unsettling, that a franchise could be steered by a star's will as much as by a coach's design. Riley didn't just benefit from the change, he mastered it, aligning authority with the player who now set the rhythm. Above it all stood Jerry Buss, the owner whose decisions sealed the outcome. Buss sided with Magic, valuing spectacle winning and star power in equal measure. His choice wasn't sentimental, it was strategic. Magic sold tickets, drove ratings, and embodied the Lakers brand. Yet the cost was real. Westhead carried bitterness for decades, arguing that ego, not philosophy, ended his tenure. The truth sits in the middle. Magic didn't destroy the system. He outgrew it. In doing so, he helped create a new NBA reality, one where stars could challenge hierarchy and reshape franchises. The chaos was undeniable. So was the precedent. From brothers to enemies, Magic versus Isiah. At one time, the bond between Magic Johnson and Isiah Thomas ran deeper than rivalry. They weren't merely all-stars or finals opponents. They were confidants. They shared agents, vacationed together, and spoke in private nicknames that reflected genuine affection. Before championship games, they embraced in ways that startled observers who were accustomed to the cold distance of elite competition. For Magic, Isiah wasn't just another rival, he was family. That intimacy is what made their eventual fracture so devastating, turning a once private friendship into one of the NBA's most public and enduring feuds. The pressure began on the court, where Thomas led the Detroit Pistons bad boys with a ruthless edge designed to disrupt the Showtime Lakers. Those playoff wars were violent, psychological, and unapologetic. Bill Laimbeer embodied that approach: hard fouls, intimidation, and a willingness to cross lines that others wouldn't. Yet for Magic and Isiah, this was still basketball. Competitors were expected to separate bruises from bonds. The league assumed they would. What no one anticipated was how events off the court would turn competitive fire into personal ruin. Everything changed in November 1991 when Magic announced he had tested positive for HIV and would retire immediately. Fear and misinformation swept the league. In that climate, whispers carried enormous weight. Magic later believed that questions circulating about his sexuality questions he felt originated from someone he trusted marked the true betrayal. Isiah denied ever spreading such rumors, citing personal tragedy within his own family as proof he would never do so. The truth remains unresolved, and there is no documented evidence to settle it definitively. What matters is the consequence: trust collapsed. A friendship built on years of closeness dissolved into silence, resentment, and avoidance that would last more than 2 decades. Those closest to the situation understood how deep the wound ran. John Salley, who witnessed their relationship firsthand, described a connection that went beyond convenience or image. Salley's accounts confirmed what many suspected: the fallout wasn't performative. It was personal. The damage spilled into history-making moments, including Isiah's exclusion from the 1992 Dream Team, a decision shaped by layered grudges and unresolved pain. Publicly, both men maintained composure. Privately, the distance hardened. When Magic and Isiah finally confronted their past on live television in 2017, tears replaced defensiveness. The embrace was real, but it came late. Their story is not one of simple villainy or misunderstanding. It is a cautionary tale about how fear, rumor, and pride can corrode even the strongest bonds. In the end, their rivalry didn't destroy them on the court, it shattered them off it, turning brotherhood into history's most painful what-if. HIV fear and the league's darkest moment. On November 7, 1991, Magic Johnson stood before the world and delivered news that instantly froze the basketball community. His announcement that he had contracted HIV ended one of the most celebrated careers in sports history overnight. But the loss went far beyond statistics or championships. At a time when public understanding of HIV was dangerously limited, fear spread faster than facts. Magic didn't just retire from the NBA. He stepped into a storm of uncertainty that would expose how fragile trust and compassion could be, even among teammates and peers who had shared locker rooms for years. Inside the Lakers, reactions were deeply emotional. Michael Cooper, one of Magic's closest teammates, was informed privately before the press conference. Cooper later recalled breaking down in tears, not out of fear, but grief. Like many Americans in the early 1990s, he believed HIV was an automatic death sentence. Yet Cooper chose loyalty over panic. He embraced Magic, stood beside him publicly, and became a symbol of what informed empathy looked like in a league struggling to catch up with medical reality. His support mattered because at that moment, silence and distance were becoming the norm rather than the exception. Across the NBA, however, anxiety dominated. Players worried about sweat cuts and physical contact, elements inseparable from professional basketball. The science was clear even then: HIV could not be transmitted through casual contact or play. But knowledge did little to quiet emotion. Karl Malone voiced what many were thinking when he expressed discomfort about competing against Magic in a game where blood and abrasions were common. Malone insisted he respected Magic personally, yet his comments reflected a broader stigma, one rooted in fear rather than malice. These sentiments weren't isolated. They echoed through locker rooms across the league, reinforcing the idea that Magic had become a risk instead of a colleague. The consequences were profound. When Magic attempted a comeback in 1992-93, every minor scrape became a spectacle. Opponents backed away. Trainers rushed the floor. Magic later admitted he could see fear in players' eyes, and that realization drained the joy from the game he loved. Eventually, he stepped away, not because his body failed him, but because the environment had become emotionally unlivable. HIV hadn't just ended his career. It fractured relationships, altered perceptions, and revealed how easily fear could override facts. In hindsight, this chapter of NBA history is uncomfortable but necessary. Magic Johnson's courage helped educate millions and challenge stigma over time, but the immediate cost was immense. Michael Cooper's loyalty and Karl Malone's hesitation represent two sides of a league caught between ignorance and growth. The tragedy wasn't simply that Magic stopped playing. It was that for a moment fear nearly erased humanity from the game and forced one of its greatest ambassadors to carry that burden alone. The Dream Team snub that changed everything. By the early 1990s, Magic Johnson had already shaped the NBA's past and present. The 1992 Olympic Games were meant to be his graceful international farewell, a celebration of basketball's global ascent and his role in it. The Dream Team was assembled to be flawless, dominant, and symbolic. Yet behind the smiles and gold medals, one absence spoke louder than any dunk. The exclusion of Isiah Thomas was not accidental, nor was it explained publicly at the time. It was the result of a quiet reckoning years in the making. On paper, Isiah Thomas belonged. A two-time NBA champion Finals MVP and the unquestioned leader of the Detroit Pistons, he had defeated Magic's Lakers and earned respect through relentless competition. But basketball history is not written by numbers alone. Isiah's Bad Boys Pistons had built their dynasty by dismantling opponents physically and psychologically, forging deep resentment across the league. More importantly, his once intimate friendship with Magic had collapsed after the HIV announcement, leaving wounds that never properly healed. When roster discussions began, Magic's voice carried enormous weight. His reluctance to include Isiah was not framed as revenge, but as discomfort, an emotional residue that still lingered beneath the surface. Standing firmly beside Magic was Michael Jordan, whose rivalry with the Pistons was openly hostile. For Jordan, Isiah symbolized years of punishment, frustration, and blocked ascension. The Pistons had humiliated him, enforced Jordan rules, and walked away without apology. Jordan never hid his feelings, and his opposition added decisive pressure to an already delicate situation. The Dream Team needed unity, not unresolved grudges. From that perspective, Isiah became the one variable deemed too volatile to include regardless of merit. What followed was a masterclass in silence. No official explanation was offered. No press release acknowledged the omission. Isiah watched from home as the greatest assembly of basketball talent ever created dominated Barcelona without him. The message was unmistakable, even if unspoken history would move forward without reconciliation. For Isiah, the snub cut deeper than any playoff loss. It wasn't just exclusion, it was erasure from a moment designed to immortalize an era. In retrospect, the Dream Team's perfection came at a moral cost. Magic Johnson achieved his symbolic return. Michael Jordan cemented his global reign, and basketball conquered the world. But the absence of Isiah Thomas revealed how power operates quietly, shaping legacies without confrontation. This was not a public execution. It was a silent removal. The Dream Team didn't merely showcase greatness, it exposed how unresolved rivalries and personal wounds can quietly rewrite history, leaving one of the era's defining champions permanently outside the frame. A 26-year feud ends in tears. For more than a quarter century, the distance between Magic Johnson and Isiah Thomas felt permanent. Their names were spoken together only in the past tense, once brothers, now symbols of unresolved pain. Years passed with no phone calls, no private meetings, only carefully avoided eye contact at league events. Fans debated blame. Historians debated facts. What lingered was the silence heavier than any accusation, shaped by fear, pride, and the scars of a moment neither man had ever fully processed. That silence finally broke in December 2017 during a nationally televised NBA special designed to confront unfinished business. What unfolded surprised even the most cynical observers. There was no posturing, no defensive language, no attempt to win an argument long past its expiration date. Magic spoke first, his voice unsteady, admitting how deeply the years had weighed on him. Isiah listened, visibly shaken. When he responded, it wasn't with rebuttal, but with acknowledgement of hurt, misunderstanding, and the emotional damage caused by decades of distance. The conversation didn't resolve every factual dispute, but it did something far more important. It restored humanity. Then came the moment no script could fake. Tears fell, arms wrapped tightly. The embrace lasted longer than television etiquette usually allows, as if time itself had paused to make room for release. It wasn't a reconciliation built on agreement, but on exhaustion. Both men were older now, carrying legacies secured long ago. Winning the argument no longer mattered. Healing did. In that instant, the bitterness of the early 1990s finally loosened its grip, replaced by the understanding that unresolved pain ages poorly, but forgiveness still arrives with power. The significance of that hug reached beyond two former rivals. It served as a quiet indictment of the era that had torn them apart, an era shaped by fear, misinformation, and emotional isolation. Their reconciliation did not rewrite history, nor did it pretend the past never happened. Instead, it reframed it. Magic and Isiah showed that closure doesn't require perfect clarity, only courage. The healing was undeniably late, but it was real. And in a league defined by competition, their reunion offered something rarer than championships, proof that even the deepest wounds can soften if given time, honesty, and the humility to finally let go. Magic's front office meltdown. When Magic Johnson returned to the Los Angeles Lakers in 2017 as president of basketball operations, the move felt inevitable. For decades, Magic had symbolized authority, vision, and winning in purple and gold. This time, however, the role came with conditions he had never truly faced before. The modern NBA front office was no longer a monarchy. Decisions required consensus. Power was shared, documented, and scrutinized. Magic entered believing his legacy would translate into absolute control. What he found instead was resistance, and the first cracks in a comeback built on expectation rather than reality. At the center of that tension stood Jeanie Buss, the team's owner and a longtime family friend. Buss hired Magic to restore relevance after years of losing, but she did not surrender the organization's structure. When Magic pushed aggressively to fire head coach Luke Walton during a disappointing 2018-19 season, Buss refused. It was a subtle but seismic shift. For the first time in his Lakers' life, Magic's voice could be overruled. The authority he once wielded effortlessly now came with limits, and that realization unsettled him far more than any losing streak. The internal strain deepened with Rob Pelinka, the general manager Magic believed was an ally. Behind the scenes, Pelinka sent emails to ownership criticizing Magic's work ethic and availability, portraying him as disengaged while major decisions loomed. When those messages were inadvertently revealed to Magic, the sense of betrayal cut deep. This was not a philosophical disagreement, it was personal. For a man whose career had been marked by loyalty rewarded and disloyalty punished, the discovery confirmed his fear that trust had evaporated inside the building. Ironically, Magic's biggest achievement as an executive remained intact. In the summer of 2018, he helped secure LeBron James, restoring instant credibility to the franchise. Yet even that triumph couldn't stabilize a front office defined by misalignment. On April 9, 2019, Magic chose the only exit that felt familiar: public control. He resigned abruptly during a live television interview, bypassing internal process entirely. The act echoed his 1981 confrontation with authority, dramatic, unscripted, and absolute. In the end, Magic didn't fail because he lacked vision. He failed because the league had changed. Power was no longer granted by legacy alone, and when Magic could no longer bend the system to his will, he walked away once again, leaving shock questions and unfinished business in his wake. Legends who chose to beat Magic, not join him. Greatness has a strange gravity. It pulls talent closer, but it can also push pride away. Few players embodied that paradox more fully than Magic Johnson. By the early 1980s, Magic was the engine of Showtime, the smiling center of a dynasty that promised championships to anyone willing to fall in line. Yet for some legends, the invitation came with an unspoken cost. To join Magic meant accepting a reduced orbit, a quieter voice, and a legacy partially rewritten under his glow. No decision illustrates this better than the one made by George Gervin, the elegant scorer known as the Iceman. At the height of his career, Gervin had a real chance to join the Lakers. Los Angeles was reportedly prepared to part with multiple first-round picks to make it happen. Rings were within reach, spotlight guaranteed. And yet Gervin declined. His explanation was disarmingly honest. He wanted to beat Magic, not join him. That choice wasn't rooted in animosity. It was grounded in identity. Gervin understood that his greatness lived in being the focal point, not a complementary piece, no matter how golden the result might be. This mindset wasn't unique. Across the league, stars respected Magic deeply while choosing distance. Playing alongside him required total buy-in to his tempo and vision. Magic didn't dominate through selfish scoring. He dominated through orchestration. He decided when the ball moved, when the game accelerated, when others shined. For some competitors, that was liberating. For others, it felt like surrender. Championships could be shared, but authorship rarely was. Magic's teams had leaders, but they had one author, and not every legend was willing to co-sign their own story. The irony is that Magic never demanded subservience. His leadership style was generous on the surface passes, first smiles always. Yet the result was the same. The system bent toward him, and everyone knew it. That awareness shaped careers and decisions quietly, without headlines. Gervin's refusal became symbolic, a reminder that legacy isn't measured only by rings, but by agency. To some, the chance to compete on equal terms, even in defeat, mattered more than standing on a podium built by another man's vision. In the end, Magic Johnson was so great that he forced a choice few superstars ever do. Join him and win, or stand apart and define yourself in opposition. George Gervin chose the latter, and in doing so revealed a truth about Magic's brilliance. It didn't just elevate teammates, it tested the very meaning of independence. For legends built to lead, sometimes the bravest move wasn't to follow the brightest star, but to challenge it head-on. Larry Bird, the only one who truly understood Magic. Among all of basketball's legends, no one ever saw Magic Johnson more clearly than Larry Bird. Their rivalry wasn't built on trash talk or spectacle, but on mutual recognition. From the first moment Bird watched Magic play, he understood he was witnessing something rare, an athlete capable of bending the game to his will without brute force. Yet that understanding came with caution. Bird knew that Magic's joy, charisma, and command carried consequences. To engage too closely, he believed risked dulling the competitive edge required to defeat him. For years, Bird kept his distance deliberately. They met in finals all-star games and defining moments of the 1980s, but the relationship remained strictly professional. Bird later admitted that friendship would have softened the rivalry. He needed Magic to be an adversary, not a companion. What set Bird apart from others, however, was that he never resented Magic's power. He accepted it as reality. While many players bristled at Magic's influence over teammates, coaches, and narratives, Bird adjusted. He didn't fight the spotlight, he ignored it. Where Magic thrived on momentum and connection, Bird relied on discipline and detachment. Each man sharpened the other by contrast. Everything changed in 1991. When Magic announced his HIV diagnosis, the league froze. Fear and uncertainty spread quickly, but Bird responded instinctively. He was one of the first to reach out not as a rival, but as a human being. That call marked a quiet turning point. The competition that once defined them gave way to something deeper. Bird saw Magic stripped of invincibility, facing vulnerability with grace. In that moment, resentment dissolved into respect, and distance transformed into solidarity. The rivalry that saved the NBA had matured into a bond forged by shared history and hard-earned empathy. In later years, Bird spoke openly about Magic with clarity few others possessed. He never denied Magic's flaws, his need for control, his gravitational dominance, but he understood their purpose. Magic wasn't selfish, he was certain. And certainty, Bird knew, is often mistaken for arrogance by those standing nearby. In the end, Bird became the rare figure who didn't shrink under Magic's light or rebel against it. He stood beside it, equally bright in his own way. Their journey from enemies to confidants reveals the final truth of Magic Johnson's legacy. To truly understand him required not admiration or fear, but the strength to meet greatness without losing yourself. In the end, the story of Magic Johnson forces an uncomfortable question that still divides fans and legends alike. Was Magic misunderstood because he was too powerful, or resented because his greatness came with consequences? Others were unwilling to accept. From locker room tension to broken friendships, from championships to silence, his journey shows that excellence often carries a hidden cost. Even Larry Bird, the one man who truly understood him, needed years to reach that clarity. So here's the real debate for Legends of Black excellence: does true greatness unite people, or inevitably leave scars along the way?